Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I'm at Forrest Hamilton, and I work with Universal Coin and Bullion. I have for, about 17 years now, here in Beaumont. I'm going to spend the first few minutes telling a few stories. So I understand some of you are just here, probably it's an easy class, probably play with your phone. I don't have any issue with that, I understand. But if you can, I'm going to talk for about 45 minutes. I think the last couple times, raise your hand if you ever heard me speak. If you have, a couple, one or two. All right, I'll try not to be too boring. I had the best response that I've ever had. I speak all over the country, I've spoken in Israel, Japan. I mean, I love getting up and speaking because it terrifies me. Anyone have that? Everyone feel like you're scared? I mean, if I called you up right now, come up and go ahead, hey, you give the class. There's like, people will pass out at a certain point. So, but I had the best response, I was just telling Amy, that I've ever had from a group of kids, I say kids slightly, right? I think everybody in here is under 40, hopefully, me barely. But a group of students or a group of people in 5 years of speaking around the country. I've put my cell phone number up on a whiteboard before. I've put my email up on a board before. And in a group of 1,000 people where I did that, I think I had 20 people or so that actually contacted me afterwards. This last group, it was almost half. Out of almost 100 people, I think I had 40-something people that emailed me and my assistant, that called to get help after the class. Because it's not just, I don't want this to just be a lecture. I don't want it to be a speech. I don't want it to be something where it's a good head nod and stuff where you go, oh yeah, that makes sense, and then nothing comes of it. Because my real goal, my prayer as I'm sitting in my car, sitting outside today, is God, let me have an influence on a few people that could possibly change their life. So I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Last time it was about half, 40-something kids or so, or people that called me or contacted me. I'd love to see it be all but a few. And then talk about it. I don't know, are y'all is this a study, is this a class that comes every time, or is this just an event? Y'all are coming from multiple different areas. Okay, so have y'all all been in a class before together? No? Okay, so if possible, try to connect. Like, see who's in this for the next 45 minutes to an hour. Connect to somebody on campus, or whether it's sports or whatever it is, and kind of talk about what you got from it. Because I still, from spring of this year, I still have people that are calling me, that are emailing, and that are moving forward in their careers based on that. Now, this is mostly sophomores, juniors, is that right? Is that accurate? Okay. So, my name is Forrest Hamilton. I'm going to do something to raise my level of influence for you. Right now, I'm just a guy standing here. You've made some judgments probably already. Not in a negative way, but that's just what we do. We hear somebody, we see somebody, we instantly go through this little process in a few seconds of what we think about. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to build some pieces up to where you want to listen. My goal is to have you go from sitting back to leaning forward because you believe you can get something from me. So I'm going to tell you my story. I was born in Duval, Washington. Anybody ever hear that? Duval, Washington. Funny enough, anybody watch The Voice? So there's a guy on there right now that's from Duval, Washington. I was blown away. I got all these Facebook messages from my high school friends. They're like, oh my gosh, somebody from The Voice. Duval, there's like 40 people in the town. I mean, it's that little. It's up in the mountains of Washington State. And my dad was born in Beaumont. He was raised in Waco. He played football at Baylor, went off to Vietnam, was a chopper gunner. He was the guy that would basically have this huge gun and just shoot up villages. And he was shot down 3 different times. He was an only survivor 2 of the 3 times. So he was very guilty. He was very angry. He hated the government, the United States government, for putting him in that position for a war he didn't believe in. When he came back, those that know the story, he was spit on. They basically, people said that if you went over there and fought, you were a jerk, right? They wouldn't hire you. It was amazing. Of course, he didn't choose to. He was drafted. So he gets back and they became what they call a booney vet, where you go off into the boonies, you go off the grid. And when I tell you he's a mountain man, write down davidhamiltonwinery.com. Just write that down on something. That's my dad's winery now, but you'll see him. He looks like Santa Claus. He's about 6'4", he's got a beard down to here, white hair down to about here, right? And he lives in the mountains still. But he delivered me when I was born, out in the woods. We had a little logging truck that was broken down, and he just built a little, maybe 500 square foot house. That was what I grew up in. Delivered me out there in the woods, no doctor, no nothing. I had no running water. I had no electricity until I was 15. I was as backwoods as you can get. I mean, when I say I was poorer than anybody in here, nobody can come close, right? It's not a contest, but I can relate to just about everybody in here, whether it's very poor, picked on, I was beat up. Imagine this, you're in a school bus, and then on comes this kid wearing moccasins. I smell like chickens and rabbits and goats and pig. We don't have a shower. You want to take a bath, you're either getting the rag from the stream, or we would heat up water about once a week, or you have to build a fire to do it. I mean, it's all amazing story, right? When I was in it, I hated life. Not all the time. I mean, things were good, and we had food. It was good. It was cool. But when I tell you school was a nightmare, and it's because I had no influence. I had zero ability in my own mind to have any effect on my circumstances. I'd get tripped. I was the easiest target there was. And then I had one friend until I was kindergarten until I was a freshman in high school. One. There's other kids I would see sometimes that were sometimes nice to me unless their friends were around, and then I was picked on again because the social little cliques. One friend that cared about me, his family cared about me, and it wasn't fun. So, freshman year of high school though, I started to play some sports, right? I didn't have to buy a glove. They provided a glove. Some things that I couldn't have before. Well, I was pretty strong from being on the farm. I was pretty fast. I have a car most of the time, so if I'm going to go to my friend's house, I'm going to run. So it's 3-4 miles away. I'm running both ways. I'm in shape, right? Pretty fast. Hit the ball pretty far. Catch the ball pretty good. End up scoring a few touchdowns in my first freshman year of high school, and all of a sudden, now I'm the starting tailback, and I go from the dirty kid that nobody wants to be around to like homecoming king in a matter of a few months. And that was really hard for me. It's what I thought I wanted, by the way. It's like made-for-TV movie, right? I thought all I wanted was to be in those groups and be liked and that. But all of a sudden I got there, and then the cheerleader that was mean to me a few days before now wants to go steady, right? I know y'all don't say that, so I wanted to talk to me. Right? So, and then I was like, I couldn't, well, guess what? I dove head first. It was everything I wanted. So I was in it, and I left my one friend out. He wasn't cool, so I couldn't hang out with him, or else I might not be cool anymore. I went through that whole made-for-TV movie. And then about maybe 6 months into it, I'm just mad. Now I'm thinking these people aren't really my friends anyway. I've ruined my one friend. I want them to move, go somewhere else, do something. And then my mom says, are you sure that if the roles were reversed, if you had been the rich kid or even just the middle class kid, and then somebody like you had gotten on the bus, would you have made fun of him? Would you have picked on him? No way. She said, are you sure? And so I thought about it, and I started thinking, I kind of did that once I became popular. I did that once I became cool. I did that once I got into circles I wanted. And so instead of using my newfound influence to help other people, I was just using it to hurt myself. I secluded myself from every friend group. But the cool thing is, by the time I was a sophomore, essentially, I was friends with every group. Because I had figured out that there is nobody, God didn't make anybody better than anybody else. He just didn't. We're all exactly the same. And then what we view about ourselves is what determines our level of influence. So I'm going to get into some scientific, influential techniques and stuff here in a few minutes. There's 6 rules of influence that you're going to really like that you can use. But if you don't get this piece first, you won't use it. Because you'll do whatever level of influence you think you have based on what you think about yourself right now, and that's about as much as you'll get accomplished. So, fast forward a little bit, ended up going to play baseball at a few different colleges. But there was this guy, it was my uncle, who was one of the coolest people I'd ever met. Well, part of the reason he was cool is because he was so nice to me, right, when I was growing up. From the time I was 6 until I was 16, he would send a plane ticket up to Washington State. My dad would hitchhike into Seattle, he'd put me on an airplane, and I would fly to Beaumont, Texas, and spend a month per year, every year, with my uncle, who happened to found Universal Coin and Bullion, which is where I work. So it was literal rags to literal riches once a year. It's like 2 lives, essentially, that I was living. But it was always so painful. I'd get down here, and it was awesome. Jet skis and Mercedes, and it was cool, like wave a magic wand, anything I wanted to eat, But then that end of the month would come back, and then I had to go back and be with my parents and back to my reality, the circumstantial piece that I thought I had. Well, when I graduated high school, I had an option to play at about 5 different schools to play baseball. And my uncle said, here, I'll put you in a condo, I'll fully furnish it, you can work at the gold company, whatever hours that you want. You're a good example to my 2 spoiled brat sons. They're both rich and spoiled. You work hard, you do what you're told, you're respectful, just come down. That was a no-brainer. So I came down, he bought me a truck. I mean, it was awesome, right? Don't tell the NCAA, please. But, this is recorded now. I don't think I can give me more. So, it was the best ever. So I'm down here, but guess what? I was country come to town. I struggled so bad in that transition because once I got out of my little circle of where people did think that I was cool or did listen to me or whatever, I thought that it was different when you went elsewhere. I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to reprove myself. Oh, and everything was based on what I felt was success. Like I had to be successful for someone to listen to me. And so I got scared. I started to get really reclusive. I ended up, the coach tells me, hey, we're going to redshirt you. I was so hard on myself that, does everybody know what redshirt means? Okay, raise your hand if you don't. Redshirt, basically, if you don't know, means that they're not going to waste a year of your eligibility. When you come to school, you usually have 4 years of eligibility to play for the team. If they don't really care, but they'll just use you for 1 or 2 games and waste a year of eligibility. But he says, on a redshirt, you're still going to travel with the team some, you're going to practice with the team, right? But in my mind, I heard, you're not good enough. In my mind, I heard, you're not good enough to play for this team, you can't do this. And I said, I knew it. That was my mindset. I knew it. I knew that just where I was up in Duval, Washington wasn't the same as here. So I didn't ask somebody what redshirt meant because I didn't actually know what it meant. I just thought it meant I wasn't good enough. So I just quit, just ran away. I quit Lamar. I quit everything. And I was going to fly back to Washington State and be done. My uncle said, you're an idiot. He said, I didn't tell him I was redshirted. I just said I didn't make the team. Now, if I would have used a person that I cared about and trusted, maybe other than my mom and dad the most, and my one friend, the most in the world, he would have told me that it was a compliment, that they wanted to reserve me, that they wanted me to get seasoned. And then I would have been, oh, it would have changed my life. I'm really glad now I didn't do it. But looking back, I felt like an idiot for 15 years or so. And so I started working with my uncle, doing gold business, got really engaged in sales. Who's tired of reading after 20 years of being in school? You guys, who reads a lot for pleasure right now? Count yourself out. I'm going to remember you. I was so sick of reading that I didn't want to read anymore. I mean, I was done. But I started listening to this, they were called tapes. They were these cassette tape things. And for CDs and MP3s and iTunes. I was listening to this cassette tape. Write down Psychology of Achievement. You guys write that down. If you get it, you can get most of it on YouTube probably. But this guy named Brian Tracy did this thing called Psychology of Achievement. And I started listening to it. And the first 2 cassette tapes, the A side and B side, I thought, this is
in your Walkman.
What's that?
In your Walkman.
Yeah, in my Walkman, right? No, I think I had boomboxes. The first 2 tapes, I was like, this is bull. This is a bunch of crap. I mean, he's saying stuff like, your dominant thoughts create your reality. He's saying, you become what you think about all day long. He's saying all this stuff, right? And I'm like, whatever. If that was the case, then everybody would be rich and happy and famous and, right, all that. And then, of course, about 5 minutes later, he says, and I know you're thinking that if everybody could do this, why wouldn't they? And it's because people don't really believe it. People have told themselves that they can't accomplish something, so therefore they don't. So I just kept listening. And then I thought, well, he had this little application thing at the end where if you did something for 30 days, it was like a challenge. Well, I like challenges. So I was like, all right. So I did it for 30 days. And all of a sudden, I accomplished a few things that I didn't before. So I just started devouring everything this guy wrote. By the way, he didn't graduate high school. Flunked out of junior high school English and has 55 best-selling books now. Never finished high school. So I liked what he said because he proved you could do it. You didn't have to be naturally gifted, all these pieces. He taught the system of how to do it. So I don't want to go to you. I could talk for 2 hours about this. But I started to really study his stuff and apply it. All of a sudden I got better at sales. I started making quite a bit of money at Universal Coin. I was driving, I went through the silly phases. I went through I had a Mercedes convertible. I had to do this. I had to buy a fancy house. I went through all the things that I thought I wanted, right? Which, by the way, if I have to choose between having money and not having money, I'm going to choose to have money. Because it makes your life, it's not so much easier, but it allows you to accomplish some things that otherwise are very difficult to do. It allows you to go places, to see people. So don't allow someone to tell you that money's bad. Money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of evil. So I don't love the money, but I love the influence that it got me. So I got kind of addicted to that process. Making money, starting businesses, and then by the time I was 30 years old, I had started more businesses and done more things than I ever dreamed I would. And so I decided I wanted to meet this Brian Tracy guy. So this is Brian Tracy. And I told my wife, I have 3 little girls, by the way, a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, beautiful wife. My wife's name is Stormy. I'm Forrest, she's Stormy. Those are our real names. So I said, Stormy, I want to meet this Brian guy and just tell him thank you. I just want to say thank you to him. She's like, okay, cool. So I'm real big on gratitude. And so I start calling his office. I'm like, hey, can I talk to Brian Tracy, please? He's in Solana Beach, California. And they say, oh, sure, absolutely. It's $50,000 for an hour. I said, excuse me? It's $50,000 for an hour. I was like, well, how much is like 30 seconds? and I said, thanks, And they're like, sorry, he's booked until, mid next year. Wow, what? I mean, really? And so I start thinking, all he did was, write some books that made some sense, right? But I want to thank him for the influence he had on my life, right? So I start calling his offices and getting to know his secretaries, got to know his personal assistant. I sent him a free silver coin. I'm working to increase my level of influence on them so that I can see this guy. Because really, now I don't want to say thank you. I want to know, how did you get to where you make $50,000 an hour, right? I want to know his secret, and I figure if he'll tell me. So far, everything he's told me to do that I did worked. At this point in my life, at 30, I already made my first million. I'd already said, I can do some stuff, but I'm not anywhere near this guy's ballpark. So I said, I'm going to get in there. Well, it took me 3 months, and his personal assistant called me. She says, Forrest, thank you for the coin, by the way. I ain't no problem. She said, he has a meeting this weekend in New Mexico with his inner circle. It's 12 business people that he works with per year. They each pay $100,000 per person every 6 months. So it's $200,000 a year. But they pay him to spend 3 weekends with him at a different location. Napa Valley wine tours and all this stuff. And I was like, okay. She said, and one of them couldn't make it. So we want to invite you to come to New Mexico, go to Santa Fe, be part of the inner circle for this one weekend. What's the catch? How much is it? She's like, oh, no. Since the other person didn't join, since they didn't pay their money and they couldn't make it this weekend, if you'll just pay your airfare and your hotel, you can come. I'm thinking. My wife's sitting right next to me in the car, and I got it on speaker, and I'm like, there's no way. This is a joke. Surely there's going to be like 100 people show up, and we're all going to have to pay some money, or we're getting paid for it. There's a catch. My wife's going, say yes. Say yes now. So I do. I'm like, okay. I get there. I walk in, reception. Brian Tracy walks up to me and goes, you must be the guy that's charming all my secretaries. Well, he already knew who I was, right? Because they've been talking to me. You don't always know the influence you're having or the connections that you're engaging in outside of what you're doing. You don't know all the actions, so you got to just that's where this consistency piece will come in a minute. So we connect. I sit by his right-hand side at a board table with him for 8 hours a day for 3 days. Amazing. The stuff I learned as far as business goes, I could write 20 books about. But at the end of it, he says, all right, there's these 12 people, and I'm a little fish. I'm doing well financially. These people are like 50 and 100 millionaires. He's a billionaire, right? It's just crazy table that I'm sitting at. And he says, 100 times a year, someone comes up to me at an event. He speaks to 2.5 million people a year all over the world, right? And they say, I'm going to be the next Brian Tracy. He said, I just smile, nod my head. He said, but about once every 10 years, somebody comes up to me, and I tell them they should be the next Brian Tracy. He said, Forrest, that's you. I'm crying. All right. Thank you, Brian. That's a dream come true. And I'm in it, because it was like really goosebumps. Talking about is that what he wrote, what I did to apply it, helped change my life. And at the end, he goes, hey, what was that? How'd you like to write a book? I'm like, oh. Who would like to write a book at some point in your life? He said these words, because I said, I don't know. I'm not much of a writer. I'm going through all these negative things. And he looks me straight in the eyes and he goes, Forrest, Every single person has a book inside of them that only they can write, and the world deserves to read it. I thought, that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard. And it made, hit a spot in me that said, I want to write. You write. And I'm like, but how? And he goes, well, I need to know now. I'm like, yes. He goes, all right, we have 2 weeks to get me your entire section of the book. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I spent 2 weeks sleepless, basically, and wrote this. It's called Pushing to the Front. That's Brian, that's me back when I had hippie hair. But the book became a bestseller, got to number 6 bestseller on Amazon. Really cool experience, ended up traveling the world, doing a lot of speaking because of it. But all I did was tell my story. And then because I have this little thing that says that I was a best-selling author, please understand, this has nothing to do with bragging. What I want to do right now is get stuff across to you that you can accomplish. It's not about writing the book. I'm laying out a case to help you understand what you're capable of in a very short period of time. This is 2011. This is 2 years ago, right? So I go to Hollywood and get this best-selling trophy, and then Brian calls me and says, hey, you want to do another book? That one went really well. Your section was very well received. It made a bestseller. I was like, no. He's like, what do you mean no? I'm like, it's just so much work. I'm working 12 hours a day at the gold business, and then I'm coming home and I'm writing, and I'm speaking, and I took it back. This is like everything I ever wanted. I'm traveling with my family. I'm bringing my 2 kids at the point now I have 3. Bring my 2 kids, traveling everywhere I go. I'm charging, this talk right here would be $5,000 for almost this exact talk to a business. I did get a really nice Lamar University business, right? But I said no, and he goes, you're an idiot. What was his exact words? A little tough love, right? You're an idiot. He said, this book is called The Only Business Book You'll Ever Need. He said, you'll be the only gold guy that's in it. He said, you know who's going to write other stuff that's in it? This is a guy named Lee Steinberg. He's the top NFL agent of all time. They made a little movie about his story called Jerry Maguire. Anybody ever see that movie? He wrote a chapter in it. Brian Tracy wrote a chapter. Robert Allen, who wrote the book Multiple Streams of Income, which changed my investing strategy for my life. So we wrote that book. A month later, it became a bestseller. So then I get another phone call. Hey, anybody read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill? That should be mandatory reading in elementary school. So this book, Think and Grow Rich, the Napoleon Hill Foundation contacts me. We'd like for you to be a part of our book. It's called Think and Grow Rich Today. I'm like, no, I don't have time. I say yes. It became a number 1 bestseller. Never been that before, right? So I tell you all that, all these awards, all this stuff. I own a film company, I own a real estate business, I own a winery. None of that was possible when I was sitting in one of these chairs 20 years ago. The way that I viewed myself and what I was capable of, I couldn't have written a paragraph and had it be well received because of what I thought of myself. It took, unfortunately, for somebody to have more confidence in me than I had in myself. So we're going to start with, this book is what I'm going to be referencing a lot today. This is called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. It's by Robert Cialdini, and in most circles of major business, this is really considered the best marketing book, the best sales book, because it ties all aspects together. It doesn't just teach you how to talk somebody into something. It doesn't just talk to you about manipulation or persuasion. Who knows the difference between persuasion and manipulation? Say again?
How the other person takes what you say. It's not about what you say to them.
Okay, that's good. I struggled because I've been in sales since I was 17, since I left baseball. And I struggled. People were like, oh, you're a salesman. Ugh. Like a car salesman, right? You're just talking people into stuff. And then I read something by Zig Ziglar. You notice a lot of this goes back to what I read, right? I read something by Zig Ziglar, and he talked about how if you do enough things for other people, eventually, if you help enough other people get what they want, eventually you get what you want. I thought, that's cool. And then he talked about the difference in manipulation and persuasion. Manipulation is when you do something for your own benefit without regard to what the other person is going to get or have done to them. You do it for your benefit only and not the others. Persuasion is when you lay out a case, you help push that person or pull that person or move that person along towards a certain means with their benefit in mind and yours. See, idealistically, we would all just be Mother Teresa. We would do everything for the other person because it's the right thing to do in humanity. I'm not that person. I would love to be. I've strived to be closer to that every single day. But I'm not. Turns out, and this is one of my favorite quotes, Mother Teresa is one of the most selfish people in the world. Because guess what happens every time she helped somebody or helps somebody? She feels good about that. Well, that means that she's kind of doing it for herself too. So all that it takes is this little tweak in our mind and be conscious of what we're doing. So, psychology of persuasion. There are 6, he breaks down 6 different categories of influence. Number 1, reciprocity. Reciprocity is when you can create, and this is whether you're going to go get a job interview, this is whether you're going to take somebody on a date. So I'm going to break some of these down and how you can actually use them. And then it's going to be up to you to figure out how to use them, because I don't know all your life situations. I don't know if y'all are working full-time and going to school. I don't know if you were born rich. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to give you a few tools and techniques that you can then apply. Feel free to email me, call me, afterwards. It may take a few days or sometimes a few weeks for me to respond, but be persistent, which is going to be one of the things we'll talk about, and I'll be happy to give you answers. Reciprocity. Speaking of the car business, I worked for the summer that when I left Lamar, I worked for a summer at a car dealership. And I learned in 3 months that I had no desire to be in the car business. Has anybody ever gone and bought a new car? Or been with someone when you did? Is it something you look forward to? Right? In the old days, in the 50s and 60s, when you would come in and you would bring your truck or your car in for your trade-in, they would literally throw your keys on the roof. All right, test drive, whatever, keys on the roof. Because for you to get them, you were going to have to either have them climb up, talk them into getting it, or you were going to buy the new car. That was their takeaway. So, that's what used car salespeople don't just have a bad name because of movies. It was bad. They would do, they'd roll back the odometer on the used car. It was ugly. And even in the 1994, 95, when I was there, there was this subversive, just negativity within it. I didn't like it. But I learned a couple of cool influence pieces. The top salesman, and that's what I figured out to do, is instead of trying to figure out if I could make a few dollars, I went and started watching the top sales guy. He never made a phone call to bring somebody in. He never got up and walked outside to meet somebody on the lot. People just poured into him. It was the coolest thing ever. I was lucky to get 2 people a day to even kick a tire, right? And so I didn't sell very many cars in those 3 months I was there. But he was talking to 5 to 10 people. He had to tell people, no, you're going to have to come back. And he was selling 5, 6, 7 cars a day, making tens of thousands of dollars a month. And so I just was like, hey, what are you doing? And my mind said, oh, well, that's just because he's been doing it so long. No, it's because he had a system of influence. First thing he did is he said, go down to the store and buy a couple of cases of Coke, Diet Coke, Sprite, and Dr. Pepper. I can't afford that. I don't have any money right now. He goes, do it. So I did. He goes, now put them in the body shop in the refrigerator. And so what I would do is, let's say you're my new customer coming up, right? And, hey, Horace Hamilton, how are you? Right? So we do our little thing, we go out, we drive the car, so come on inside. And as we come inside, and I'm going to go sit you down, I don't ask if you want a Coke. I say, would you like a Coke, Diet Coke, Sprite, or Dr. Pepper? Because that pretty much covers the 4, right? And, oh, Dr. Pepper, fine. And then I would reach in my pocket and I would jingle my change. And most of you don't have change on it either anymore. But I would jingle my change as if I was buying a Coke for them. Which, by the way, I was. But I needed them to see that I was buying that Coke for them. Then I would go into the body shop. I would get the Coke, which probably cost me, at that point, 5 cents, right? But they're thinking it's 50 cents to $1 in some Coke machine, right? And I would come back in, and as I walked up to them, I didn't do it when I was in the other room, I would wipe it down with a paper towel. I had this really cool little fold thing where it was like really fast, and and boom, hand it to them, right? And I'd ask them, do you want me to pop the top? Some people don't like you to touch it. Some people can't do it. So I was very attentive to the customer's needs. But as soon as they received that from me and they knew that I had purchased it, what did we have?
A relationship.
A relationship. We had obligation. They felt obligated in some small way to me. Reciprocity. They felt a desire to reciprocate something nice to me. Now, I didn't ask for the sale right then. I wasn't trying to. What I wanted was to increase my level of influence with that customer so that at the end of the sale, at the very end, when it came down to yes or no, or $20 or $30 per month for their car note, as they, can I get you another Coke or anything? Oh, no, I'm fine. But then they're thinking, that kid really, he did. That was that little bitty piece. Now, here's another example. I was in Venice Beach last week, and I'm on the beach, which, by the way, if you like people watching, Vegas has nothing on Venice Beach. I mean, it is like, you have bearded ladies working outside. I mean, it is amazing. California is just, it's amazing. But I'm out there, and this guy comes up, and he's got his headphones on, pulls one off, right? And he's like, just smiling real big, and he's like smacking his CD, right? And he's like, hey, how y'all doing? He didn't just go, here, right? He's like, hey, how you doing? I was like, oh, good. He goes, well, here, I'd like to give you this. And before I knew it, I had it in my hand. Well, I didn't want it, but it's a CD in my hand now, right? And I was like, oh, no, thank you. He goes, no, it's a gift from me to you. He said, you'll love it. In fact, here. And he puts his headphones, and all of a sudden I got his headphones on, and I'm listening to him do it's like this reggae. It's really good, actually, right? And I'm listening to it, and he's like, enjoy, just spread the love. And he starts to walk away. And I'm like, wait! Let me give you some money. I felt obligated to give him something because he had given me something. And then I know that he wanted something back. I know he planned to get something back. But it didn't feel like it. It was so genuine, and it was so real, and it was so sincere that I don't think he would have ever looked back to see if I was coming back. I think that he really that's who he was. I think he loved his music, loved his product, and I think that if I didn't give him any money for it, he would have been okay, because I showed that I liked his music. Now, if I'd been a jerk or something, then maybe it changes the concept. But within reciprocity, you have to really focus on being sincere and being authentic. Okay? Number 2, scarcity. Who's watched Home Shopping Network? Anyone? Any of the shows like that, right? What do you notice that's in the bottom hand side that's got this little
Phone number.
ticker, right? It does have a phone number, definitely. Phone numbers everywhere, and they're yelling it too. But that ticker, I'll tell you, I do gold investments and silver investments. This is my main business here at Universal Coin. And I know how much just about every silver coin and gold coin the United States makes is worth. From the cheapest one for $25 for 1 ounce of silver to a coin we sold on Friday for $1.6 million for one coin. I know the range of what the prices are. And I will skip through, and all of a sudden that coin vault will come on, and I'm like, let's just see what these guys are doing. And they're so fired up, and they're so passionate, and I'm like, that's a joke. I mean, that's like $500 over, my cost. That's such a bad deal. But all of a sudden I see that little ticker. I'm like, oh, maybe I could buy one, because everybody else is buying it. And so what happens is that scarcity, that desire to get something that you feel is about to go away, it drives you. So in your interactions with people, number 1, think about what you're doing. Be conscious of your reciprocity. What are you doing for others, right? And a lot of you, I'm sure, are going to deal with this, by the way. You're going to struggle at times you don't want to be doing something just to get something else. This is a constant battle that I face daily. But I believe in my product. If I'm doing gold, I believe in my film company. I believe that the products that we release are excellent. I believe in our wine and our winery. And so I know that if I can increase my level of influence just long enough to get you to try any of my services or my products, you're going to want to do more, and it will enrich your life. So there is this fine line, though, and I want to reiterate it, that happens to you where you're going to feel like I'm just manipulating. But then remember, ask yourself, are you really doing it just for you, or are you doing it for both? If you're doing it for both, get everything you got, all right? So scarcity. I was on the phone with a client a few minutes before I came here, and we had a certain set of coins, and some coins there are 4,000 of them in our vault. It's difficult to create some scarcity with that. The coin I was talking to him about, there were 21 of them, right? And so as I was talking to him, he says, well, call me back after lunch. I said, frankly, and this is not a sales thing, John, I don't believe that these coins will be here after lunch, and here's why. And so I lay out this reason why. And he's like, oh, yeah, right. We have a relationship. He's done hundreds of thousands of dollars with me, but it's in our nature to think that if somebody says that, there's some BS in it. And I broke it down, and I said, I probably will have the coin again at some point, but it'll probably cost more. Why can I say that with conviction? Because I'm watching the coins go up. I'm watching the one time before it was $1,000, today it's $1,080. Doesn't seem like much, but on an investment percentage-wise, $80 move in a month is a lot. So he ended up doing the coins. There was scarcity and he felt it. And it was real, so he bought it. And I believe he did himself a favor. Number 3, liking. The whole goal of a trial attorney is to get the jury to like the client, to like the person that's up there. So if they can get them to like them, then when it comes to decision time, it's much harder to send someone to the electric chair if you like them. It's a lot harder to take them away from their kids if you like them, send them to prison for 20 years. So your job, when you're meeting, and again, this is whether it's your teacher. I had somebody outside tell me, I think all my teachers have it in for me, because it seems like they're doing this, and they're doing this, and they're doing this, and I have this test on this day, and this test on this day, and in my mind I'm thinking, man, you should work on your influence with those teachers. You should help, not say, you got it out for me, but how do you create a relationship? It's not about being a brown noser. It's kind of about being a brown noser. What I mean is, we're trained essentially through society to not like our teachers as a default. And in fact, if you do like your teachers and you do nice things for them, you're made fun of, you're ridiculed. But in the end, it has to be about what you want. What are you trying to accomplish? Do you want to be a multi-millionaire? That may be your goal. If it is, then there's some ways that make it easier and quicker to get there. Do you just want to work for Greenpeace and do things for the country? Do you want to be a missionary? Well, based on what you want to do, I have a feeling most of you are here, if you're in marketing classes like I think a lot of you are, is to do some good for the world, make a good income, provide for your families, change the world maybe. It may be in your mindset, I don't know. But if you're going to do those things, you have to find a way to increase your level of influence on those around you. And you have to start practicing it immediately. And that's one thing that if you get that influence book by Robert Cialdini, it talks about the influence pyramid. At the top of it is practice. Under practice are tools and techniques, conceptual models, and then feedback. If you've never practiced something, you won't get better at it. The only way to really make something a habit is through effort and repetition. So you have to consciously choose, all right, today I'm going to work on my influence. And guys, you won't want to, because your friends aren't going to be doing it around you. But as you start to, it's like a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger it gets. Then you'll find that, and by the way, this is kind of, when you become a master at influence, it's a superpower. I'm just telling you, you think I'm kidding, but it's amazing the things you can accomplish, the things people will do for you, and you have to choose to use your superpowers for good. Because if you don't, it's entirely too easy to have them go the other way. I've seen people take courses of mine or read some of these books, and then they go have tremendous influence over people, and what they end up doing is they end up looking back and thinking, gosh, I could have done so much good, instead I just tried to fill my pockets. It never ends up well. So do it for the right reasons, number one, but practice it. Practice it. Read this book. I'm going to say it again, Influence, Robert Cialdini. All right, number 4, excuse me, I think I already did liking. Authority. To be an expert on something. One of the ones that I utilize often, every doctor you have graduated, hopefully, unless he forged a record or something. But I want to know, did my doctor finish at the top of the class? Did he have an A? Or did he have like a C and barely pass? So I get to know my doctors. Seems kind of silly. They're doctors. They're professionals. They're experts. just because they got something hanging on the wall, I need to know more about them. I need to know, are they about to retire? They don't really care about their patients. Those are things that really mean a lot to me. Well, I didn't know to be conscious of those things until I started studying influence. So now I know where my doctors essentially, I'll ask him, were you one of those like straight A guy or were you a C? I don't mind if he says I was more of a C guy because I was whatever, changing this entire country in their regard. I mean, if he's got a good reason for why he finished with a C and I believe it and it's real to me, it's okay, but get engaged in the people around you. You'll be amazed at what you find within that. Next. Oh, by the way, on the expert piece. The reason I did a lot of this, started out just to say thank you. Then I started realizing that when I put a book, or I mailed a book to a client, or I was in a business meeting, and instead of giving them my business card, I gave them my hard copy book, autographed. It was amazing how much more influence I had immediately. So I became, in their mind, more of an expert. I had been saying the same things all along. I had been saying the right things, the good things. My coins had been performing. My businesses had been doing well, but they didn't really hear it until they heard that I was an expert. That's why I spent so much time at the beginning of this in regards to that, is to get you to hear what I could do for you. I could have just got up here and said, so my name's Forrest Hamilton, and you wouldn't have listened. So now I created some expert. How can you create some expertise? How can you don't have to answer this, but think about how in your world where you currently are, how do you start to raise your authority of why people would listen to you? Whether it's going to get a job, whether it's with your teacher, it's through commitment and consistency. The first 99% of the people that I talk to on the telephone or in person, and I say, send me a check for $100,000 for gold. 99.9% of them say no. It's a knee-jerk. Nope. You ever go into a buckle store, or I don't know where young people shop anymore, I'm almost 40, but you ever go into a store and they say, and you walk in, you've actually got the pair of pants, you tried them on last week, you hit them in the back behind something, so nobody would get them. You walk in to get them, they say, can I help you? And you say, nope, just looking. It's because we're conditioned to say no. It's like we don't want salespeople to sell us. But then that same salesperson, if they're good enough, 5 minutes later, I came in to get that one pair of pants, and I've got 14 pairs of pants and some shirts hanging over, and they know my middle name, and they already bought a present for my kids. And it's like, that's one of the reasons I like Buckle, is because they train very well on the ability to connect with people. They've figured out how to raise the influence, right? So the first time I say, send me a check for $100,000, they say no. Well, if I don't believe in my product, and I don't believe in myself, then I'm going to say, oh, okay, he just can't do it. I just get off the phone or I leave the meeting. But if I really believe in it, and I believe it can help them, then I'll take 20 no's. No, I understand, but here's why you should. Now do it. No, oh, I understand. Well, why not? And then they'll give you a reason why not, and then you show them why. So again, let's say you're going to get a job. Take it away from selling gold or doing gold investments. If you were to go get a job at, let's say you came to work for me, and I'm not hiring, right? But you come and do an interview anyway, because I'll pretty much take an interview, even if I'm completely full, to see the level of person. So you come into my interview, and I say, well, look, I'm not really hiring, but why should you get the job? By the way, that means that I am hiring. If I'll take the interview, even if I don't have another spot, I'm considering whether you're better. Oh. No, that's my alarm. So let me know I got 15 minutes. We're going to do some questions and answers. If I'm taking an interview, I'm considering replacing somebody else with you. Why would I replace somebody in my business with you if you've never done what, so I've got a guy that's worked for me for 4 years, and whether he's producing or not, or I've got a sales girl that's worked for me for 6 months, and whether she's producing or not, why would I ever replace someone that knows the business better? Why would I replace them with somebody untested and that doesn't know my business as well?
Connection.
If I have a good connection, if you pique my interest enough, if you show confidence, guys, I can't tell you how important confidence is. And you can think, oh, I'm just not a very confident person. I wasn't a very confident person. I'm still sitting up here before we're going, and I'm going, what am I doing here? I don't know, these guys aren't going to receive me. I mean, I still have negative thoughts, even though I've accomplished more than I ever thought I would. But I have to remind myself why. The old saying is, if the why is strong enough, the how will take care of itself. If why you want something is so strong that it means everything to you, you really will create your reality. If anybody knows the Thomas Edison story, Napoleon Hill, the guy that wrote the original Think and Grow Rich, he interviewed Thomas Edison, and he's sitting there with him, and he says, you had 10,000 documented failures. 10,000 documented failures on the incandescent light bulb. Think of something that you've ever failed at 100 times without succeeding. Try to think of something. 100 times. I don't care if it's a half-court basketball shot like this. 100 times usually you make 10,000. Feel free to go if you don't need to go. There are some business cards up here if you want to grab one and contact us. Now, 10,000 documented failures, and Napoleon Hill says, how did you finally do it? How in the world did you end up getting the light bulb to work? And he says, oh, that's easy. I just ran out of things that wouldn't work. And when I read that, I thought, wait, I just ran out of things that wouldn't work. That means the guy was so committed to getting the light bulb to work that no matter what happened, no matter what obstacle he faced, he was going to continue. In fact, every failure was just new information. He would fail and go, oh, okay, cool. I don't have to worry about that. That's not the answer. What is? And then the guy that's why at one point, I think 1/4 of America worked for Thomas Edison or his company. By the way, he made it through 3 years of elementary school. It doesn't matter what your schooling is, and please get your degrees. That's not what I'm not saying that. You'll never come invited back. But it doesn't, if your passion is high enough to accomplish something, then you will find a way to achieve. So in regards to influence, if you want to influence somebody, first you have to become conscious about it. Then go through this set of steps. Take the time. It will take you 1 weekend to read this book. Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, Robert Cialdini. You will reference it for the rest of your life. You will tell people about it, and I'm telling you, if you practice it, it will truly help you. So, all that being said, let me give you the last couple here. Social proof, and that's it. Social proof is number 6. Number 5 is commitment and consistency. Social proof is, who knows what salting tips are? Anybody ever heard of that? When you walk into a bar, nobody's been in the bar yet, but there's a few tips in the tip jar. It's called salting it. You put your own money in there, right? You always see three or four ones in there, and that draws people to go, oh, I'm supposed to put money here. That's social proof. Oh, he must have done a good job because somebody else tipped him, right? Well, I don't put ones. If I'm there, I put 10s and 20s, maybe 100. Right? Because not for them. I mean, they have to do a pretty good job for that. But if I'm the bartender, I'm salting it with something that I want. I'm going to show that if the guy's like, I made this critic. Did somebody tip you that 100? Oh, no, I put it in there, but I'm worth it. And here's what, it's like, you have to, I'm never shy of the truth. But if I could just get, one real big thing across to you, is that you will never solve an equation in your life that is greater than the one you were attempting to solve. You just won't. You won't end up doing calculus if you're doing basic arithmetic. If you're just doing 2 plus 2, you're not going to get long division out of it. But if you go practice something that's really big and really hard, that's really worth your time, that's worth playing for, you're going to have to do addition, subtraction. You have to know all that stuff to get that done. So be conscious where you're at right now. What would you rather? Are your relationships good with your boyfriends and girlfriends, with your moms and dads, with your teachers? If they're not, it's your fault. People don't like to hear that. I didn't used to like to hear that. I like to say, well, my dad's just a jerk. But it turned out, if it's not your fault, you can't fix it. If it's not your fault, you can't fix it. You can't. It's always going to be up to someone else whether you have a good relationship with them. Well, guess what? I know for a fact that every relationship, I don't have any bad relationships. That's not to say that I get along with everybody. Some people don't want to deal with me, right? Well, therefore, we just don't have them. But any relationship that I choose to make better, I make better. Because sometimes it's like, I'm going to put my head through a window because they're just not making sense, and then I realize maybe I'm not making sense. But in the end, I'm going to keep working on these steps, on building a relationship, if I can remember why I'm doing it. So I'm going to take some questions. We've got about 10 minutes. My shameless plug, we are hiring at Universal Coin and Bullion. Everything from sales positions to administration positions, filing, computer work, IT, search engine optimization. And it's $100 million. When I got there, we were doing $3 or $4 million a year in sales. This year, we're going to be somewhere near $120 million in sales. One of the largest gold companies in the world. And it happened because my uncle was smart enough to realize he didn't have enough influence on the market, so he hired the top coin expert in the country. He was smart. Gave up some of his profits, but then the business grew from $3 million to $120 million. So it's a neat business. It's a lot of fun. Feel free, like I said, ask for me. I'm happy to give you an interview and figure out, here's what's cool, we'll figure out what does work for you. That being said, we don't do full-time work generally with students. It doesn't usually work out for your schooling or for our business. But for the next couple of years until you graduate, develop a relationship with either me or one of the other 150 employees that are there. And then at some point, even if you don't work for us, I will be happy to assist you in finding a job somewhere, wherever it's right for you. And then helping you build your confidence. I mean, if you prove yourself to me, a testimonial from me will go a long way because I'm going to write it or speak with the person in a way that means something to them. It's not going to be some, yes, he was a good kid, and da-da-da. Like, I'm going to be like, God, I want to hire him. Just, we couldn't, I mean, he didn't want to work here, he wanted to work there, you know. But if he ever messes up, I want him. I mean, find a way to create a relationship with me, right? Or with my company. Again, business cards are up here. I'm going to give away these 3 books. So, who has a question about any part of this, from the influence side to our business? And then I'll give the books to those that ask the questions. Yes?
So how long did you say you worked for the gold company before you wrote the books?
Yes. I worked for the gold company from 1999 until 2011 before I wrote any books. Yep. So I just started writing books in 2011. Done those 3 and have one more that I just signed a publishing contract for. So my goal at this point is write a book a year on a different subject that helps me to, because what happens is, I am a bit of a procrastinator, and I'm extraordinarily ADHD. I'm sure you can tell by the fact that I've poured a path in this carpet here just talking to you, talking about 40 different subjects. But I have to have something that gives me a deadline. I need deadlines, and I need to have to do something. It's one of my weaknesses that I've turned into a strength. So I'll sign a contract, and then now I have to get the book done, and then it forces me to research that subject to get my thoughts, and all of a sudden, by the time I'm done, I have a complete info product. I can do CDs and audio and go do speaker on the country on that subject.
How did you change that weakness to a strength?
First, I became conscious of it. I was in Japan. I was snow skiing with my buddies. There's 4 of us that all grew up very poor. 2 of them still thought they were way cooler than us, though, so they didn't become friends until high school. But we call ourselves the Poor Kids. We started Poor Kid Enterprises, Poor Kid Films, Poor Kid Real Estate. We all do these businesses together now from my original hometown. And we were in Japan on this awesome ski trip in Nagano, and these guys pulled out their bucket lists. And I'm like, oh, I've got a bucket list. I got my iPhone, this is 2010, and beginning 2011. And I had 80 things on my bucket list, and I had accomplished 0 of them. And they were like, I've got 35 of my 50 done. I'm like, how do I have 0 done? And I realized that I was accomplishing things in my life, goals, but my bucket list were the things that I said, Brian Tracy calls it the if-then principle. Well, if I retire, then I'll do that. Or, if I get this much money, then I'll do that. But if-then never come. So what I did is, at that point, I made a commitment. That's where it started. I said, all right, I circled 3 things that meant the most on the bucket list. I moved them over to another piece of paper. I then put a deadline of when I was going to accomplish them, back to deadlines. I then made a list of 10 things, the 10 steps I would have to take, and deadlines on those 10 things. And all of a sudden, 3 or 4 months later, one of them was just write a book. And you can say it fell in my lap, but I think that all the pieces that I did, based on the fact that I had it in my mind, I don't want to get too technical, there's a part of your brain called the reticular cortex. And it is a finger-like little piece of your brain that if you plug something into it. You ever want a car real bad and then all of a sudden you start seeing them everywhere? It's because of your reticular cortex. It's because you've planted something, you've made it important in your own mind, and now you see it everywhere you go. So that's what happened to me, is I made those things important, I laid them out, and in 18 months I accomplished 27 of my 80 things. So now I teach a whole course on bucket
An
lists.
action plan.
Yeah, I had an action plan, but then I was accountable to it. I told everybody about it. This is what I'm going to do. So if I didn't do it, I was a hypocrite. I felt like an idiot. I had accountability by the people that meant something to me. And then there was, I said I was going to do 40 of them. I only did 27. So really I was wrong on 13. But guess what? I'd rather have 27 than 0. And I had some great things that I learned because of it, and I did some things that were far above what were on my bucket list. So you can have your pick of those. You can. And then you had a question too. So next question? Yes.
I'm just wondering, what was number 4 of the list of 6?
Authority.
What was it?
Authority.
Authority, or being an expert. That one doesn't count. Another question. Yes.
What? You said you didn't work for Universal Coin until you were 17. How did you go from a 17-year-old kid that didn't know anything about sales or the gold business into an expert in that field? What was the biggest?
Well, you're not going to like the answer, but I read a lot. I read a lot. Brian Tracy, again, this is the biggest thing I learned from one of his books, is his story about his life. He went from not graduating high school to going on this crazy trip where he crossed the Sahara Desert with 4 buddies, and when he got back, he thought, you know what, I want to be in sales, because in sales, you determine your own income. Nobody tells you what you're worth per hour, right? So he decided, I'm going to go in sales, and he was terrible. It was like door-to-door pots and pans or something, right? And he was terrible. This guy started with him on the same day, and the guy's making $2,000 a week, and he's making $200 a month. And so Brian did this thing. He said, I set my pride down, and I said, what are you doing? And the guy was like, oh, well, I'm doing this as my plan. And the guy goes, Brian goes, that's like my plan too. He says, what do you say if the client says this? And the guy had all these crazy good answers. He's like, where'd you get that information? And he opened this book bag that was full of books on sales. And the guy essentially had read every book there was on sales and applied it. So from that point, Brian Tracy said, I'm going to read every day. Differently. He reads, by the way, in 40 years, I've been around him a lot in the last couple of years, he reads 3 hours every morning before doing anything. So that means if he has a 7 o'clock meeting, he's up at like 3 to read his 3 hours. That's why, though, he's an expert on so many subjects. He said, I have enough reading and studying and mastery to have 20 master's degrees.
It's like Bill Gates too.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like Bill Gates. So the answer is, I just studied what other successful people did. I applied it, and then when it didn't work, I would ask a successful person. I had somebody that I would always, why didn't it work? And then they would give me something, and I would go back and do it. It was just a ton of trial and error, and then forcing myself to read. Because realistically, I would much rather watch Breaking Bad than read some book. Really. But then when I attached the fact that I really want this thing, and I just can't seem to get it, Breaking Bad's not going to get it there for me. But this book talks about a kid that went through the same things and now has what I want. And then the why got so strong that the how took care of itself. Any other questions? I could do this all day, but I know it's good. Yes.
So what do you do when you're really busy and you have tons of things to do, a bunch of stuff on your mind? What do you do when you really have a bad day and you just can't get out of it?
I haven't had a bad day in about 5 years. But no, here's why. It's not because I have a bunch of money. It's not because of, it's because at some point I said, I don't really like the fact that some days I resign to just being a bad day. And I started saying, catch me if you can. I went to work one day and I said, all right, I will pay anybody $1,000 cash. This is really if you can catch me having a bad day. That means if I have to have had a bad day. So throughout my day, again, I create accountability for myself throughout the day. And then I remember when I get up, I might be feeling bad, sore throat, I just lost a big sale, my kid broke her arm, whatever it is, right? My mom has cancer, all real things in our world. I recognize that it's a choice whether to let that make me have a bad day or let it motivate me to something else. I created something, if you go to my website, forresthamilton.com, there's something at the top that says Perpetual Positive Emotion Machine. Perpetual Positive Emotion Machine. So I created this thing because I I lost almost everything I had about 10 years ago. Like all my money, my relationships, because I got to a point where I felt like I didn't need other people's support. I didn't need to prove anything to anybody anymore. And so I was good enough, essentially. And in that moment, I stopped doing things that held me accountable, and all my weaknesses came to the front. My ego came to the front. This came to the front. That, and all of a sudden, I lost relationships. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in bad investments based on some poor decisions. And so I started to re-engage. And I said, instead of blocking all the negatives, I said, if I could take a negative emotion or a negative event, and I can bring it into myself, and I can process it, and choose to turn it into something positive, then my day happens usually pretty good if I'm being positive. I don't make very many good actions when I'm negative mindset. So I literally would say, and I started testing it back to practice. Somebody would say, what happens if you get hit by a bus? I'm like, cool, free bus rides forever. Probably have to slow down. It started becoming this positive mindset focus and practice. And it took work, because you can say, well, nobody's really like that. I had a good example too, though. My boss, Robert Verdi, is the most positive person I've ever seen. Not like goofy positive or just cheesy positive, but not like I am, but like real positive. And he always has a solution. He doesn't always know how he's going to figure something out, but he knows that he's going to. And that sense of absolute confidence it's contagious if you start being that. Yes.
Two things that help me in life is, in the universe, if you always put out positive, positive will always get positive. Even though energetically a positive and a negative attract. But what I have found in the universe, no matter what positive you get out, you will always get positive back. And then the other thing that a while back, I was like, life sucks, life sucks. You just turn on CNN and look at the people in Syria or Haiti, you just realize being an American, you are absolutely ahead on top 5% of the world. You know, you can walk to Walgreens and get chapstick and not get bombed, murdered, raped, pillaged.
Depends on what part of Beaumont you're in, but
But for the most part, I mean, you don't have to get car bombed. And I mean, just the fact that you're in America, just that has influenced your life and helped you by 5,000-fold.
I have this cheat is the answer also. I have perspective. I told you the way I feel like the way I grew up was about as hard as it could get. I mean, it was ugly. It was not fun. I didn't like myself. I didn't like my circumstances. Heck, I even blamed it on my parent. I mean, it was bad. And then I can always look back. And it's not just about the poor side. It's about the relationship side. It's about the self-worth pieces. And so I can always go, okay, well, it's not that bad. And then once I can start from that, and my mom said this to me when I was like 13. She's like, I think I was crying about some school project or something, right, that I really wanted to do good on. And she goes, what's the worst thing that could happen? I was like, I'm going to get an F. She's like, no, you're not. So it's better than my college work. And I'm like, whatever, you're saying that to my mom. She goes, okay, let's say you get an F, then what? I was like, then you're going to be mad at me. She's like, no, I'm not. It's the best work I've ever seen. So that's out the window. And she was like, so what's the worst thing that could happen? I'm like, well, maybe it's too good. The kids are going to make fun of me. I mean, you can pick negative out of something if you want to, right? But in that moment, I always ask myself now, what's the worst thing that could happen? So I'm going to wrap it up right now. Like I said, feel free. I'm more than happy to spend the next 5 minutes or 15 minutes. I don't know if they got somebody else coming in right after this, answering some questions individually. It's one cool thing about my schedule is I can pretty much go back to work whenever I want to. So if you want to ask me a few questions now, you can. Get my contact information. Email me. It's on here. You can either go to forresthamilton.com and email me, or you can go to forresthamilton@universalcoin.com. That will be on business cards. And email me. Either myself or my assistants will get back to you in a certain amount of time. And then depending upon how persistent you are and how much you prove that you want to influence me to help you, I will give you back the amount that you give me. And if you don't think that I can help you, then you're right. If you do think that I can help you, then you're right. So it's up to you. Like I said, I donate my time, a lot of my time, more than my wife would like. I spend a lot of Saturdays doing 20, 30-minute mentor sessions on the phone, back to back to back to back, and don't make a penny. If I'm doing it in the business world, I make a lot as a business consultant. But I find y'all are more fun to work with because you still really want it, and a lot of times you want it for the right reason. So that inspires me. And then if the Mother Teresa, I feel pretty good too. So thank you. Appreciate you coming in and being here. Your attention span is pretty awesome, and I hope that you can influence me.